Second hour on deck for you guys as well. Simon Hunter, NFL betting analyst of the Action Network, joins us in 15 minutes. We'll try to see if we can get some futures plays, some NFL Week 1 looks.
Oh, yeah. Simon's got a bunch of stuff in his pocket. I was on his podcast. We previewed the AFC East with his betting podcast, and Simon always has a lot of takes on it. It's really good to have him on because I think he does a great job of blending what he hears from a lot of the professional people that he talks to, because he's been doing this a long time, along with his own instincts as somebody who's watching the games all the time.
No, 100%. And for more of that analysis from professional handicappers, from our analysis and all this stuff, make sure you check out a VSiN.com subscription. We're giving out a special. It ends on Monday. 75% off the monthly price for the next 3 years. VSiN.com/special. If you want football analysis, obviously analysis for every other sport, but football is the main thing here in the fall as we're approaching the National Football League regular season. Speaking of football, more and more football today. We got a doubleheader in the preseason. Our producer Elliot's Indianapolis Colts, #ForTheShoe. They're hosting the Denver Broncos. Right now, I'm seeing some movements in the betting market. The Colts now out to 2.5 in some spots. 2 is the consensus number. The total is at 37.5. We talked to Troy Rank. He said that it's going to be Jarrett Stidham for about 15 to 20 plays. Then it's going to be Bo Nix for about 15 to 20 plays. But I'm really excited to see Anthony Richardson after he only played 4 games a season ago.
Well, I suspect Richardson will look good because, look, let's face it. I mean, Vance Joseph, the defensive coordinator for the Broncos, he's not going to do very much. You know, he's going to play a very vanilla scheme. And let's be even bit more clear for whether it's Jarrett Stidham or whether it's Bo Nix when he comes in the game. Gus Bradley's scheme on Sundays during the regular season is very vanilla. So it's not going to be heated up in the summer. So both quarterbacks, I think, on Denver's team should be able to throw completed passes, depending on who's out there with the receiver. But I think what you want to look at is the execution and the timing. I mean, like yesterday, you know, the Raiders quarterback's execution and timing was very good. Minnesota, outstanding. J.J. McCarthy, outstanding. That's more than, you know, anything, because, look, they can't change how the defense plays them. All they can do is execute. But I think both teams have to show that they can protect. And if both teams protect today, Denver, Indianapolis, you'll see the ball move up and down the field.
Yes, could you imagine if Gus Bradley just comes out here blitzing and is aggressive?
He's never going to do that.
Could you imagine? I mean, remember last year, the preseason game with the Cardinals? It was the first one they were playing the Broncos, and the whole knock from Eagles fans was that Gannon is not aggressive, Gannon's vanilla, and then he came out sending the house at Russell Wilson in that preseason game. But he kind of knows that, hey, I don't have the pass rushers that I had in Philadelphia. We got to do some things to generate some pressure. That was a fun moment of last year's preseason. I was like, whoa, who is this Jonathan Gannon? This is not what we saw in Philly, but he's playing the cards that he's dealt, you know, and he's a little bit more aggressive with the Arizona Cardinals. Speaking of which, did you get to catch a little Spencer Rattler yesterday for the Saints? People are a little excited out down there in New Orleans. They're saying that, hey, maybe we have something with the late round draft pick, Spencer Rattler.
Well, I think Spencer Rattler has everything you want in a quarterback except size and speed, right? I think he's got great instincts. He's got a feel for it. He's got rhythm. He's kind of, you know, he's got that crib thing that I always talk about. You know, when your mama lifts you from the crib, you're either a quarterback or you're not. I mean, you can't really, it's not a position that you can drill in, you know, because it requires vision. It requires movement. It requires that, oh, I'm going to get hit, I'm stepping up, but you don't even know you were going to get hit. You know, there's so much that goes into playing it. And Rattler has that. You know, Rattler has all those things. The problem is his arm is deficient and he's not very big. So it doesn't surprise me that he's looked good in the preseason, because his mind, when you watch the South Carolina game, he was very good, and people really, really gravitated towards him during the draft analysis process. But the problem at the end of the day is size and speed, and that's always going to be the deterrent when it comes to Rattler.
Yeah, he showed a lot of toughness for South Carolina, because that offensive line, it was rough last year, and he was getting
your girlfriend. Oof, yeah,
yeah, he was getting killed behind that offensive line for sure. But he was staying in there, making a lot of throws. We mentioned the Colts and Anthony Richardson. They're taking on the Denver Broncos later on today. Always in the preseason, we're wondering what is going to be the usage like for these starting players. Well, Richardson asked about it from the media earlier this week in Indianapolis about how much he's going to play. Here's what he had to say.
I don't think there's anything that people should be worried about, because I'm not worried about, getting hit or anything. I'm 100%, ready. My shoulder can handle it, so it's just more so just being back on the field and just, playing football again.
So no mental hurdles with that at all?
Nah.
All right, Anthony Richardson, he's not worried with no restrictions.
This isn't even going to be like a not even an SEC game today. I mean, it's going to be very low key. Look, I wouldn't worry about it.
Yeah.
Plus I think, look, when you've been hurt and you've kind of had time to watch the game, and you've had a lot of reps watching in terms of being out there on the practice field and then being in training camp, you understand now. Maybe I need to move a little bit. I need to slide. I think Josh Allen, he gets confidence because he knows he's so damn big that nobody really wants to tackle him. Mm-hmm. So he plays with such an aggressive nature that, he knows he can deliver punishment as opposed to absorb it. And I think Anthony Richardson, once he gains that confidence, will take that step. But I'm not worried about him getting hurt. I mean, you can't worry about injuries in the preseason. Your goal here is to get your team ready. You're going to lose some guys along the way, just like you're going to lose some guys during the season. That's why no team wins the title without depth.
100%. That's the thing, is that there's definitely, and I don't know if it's a generational thing with some of the younger coaches now coming in versus the older guard that we have in the NFL, but it feels like certain teams, their goal of training camp in the preseason is to get to the regular season healthy, while other teams their goal is, we need to improve this football team and take every chance that we can to improve this football team so that we're ready to go and hit the ground running. Two different philosophies. I'm more of I would say let's lean towards getting the team ready than let's just trying to stay healthy, because injuries are going to happen. It's football. It's a violent sport. It's not a contact sport. It's a collision sport. Injuries are going to happen. You cannot avoid them, but you also need to get ready, because like you mentioned in the last hour, you got to spar if you're going to get ready to go ahead and box.
I think to me the other thing that really becomes very challenging is, how do you evaluate players if you don't have contact? How do you evaluate talent? How do you do that? You can't have a walkthrough. You can't evaluate in a walkthrough. You can't evaluate in thud. How do you tell if your running back is going to be able to get yards after contact if there's no contact? How do you tell if the defensive players have physicality if there's no contact? How do you do that? You need to be able to really, to judge your team, to correctly evaluate, because here's what's got to happen. Whether you're here at the University of Washington or whether you're in the NFL, you have about 4 weeks to figure out who you are as a team, and every team is different. And the job of the head coach is then to determine, how do we need to play to win? How do we need to play to win? I think Andy Reid did that. It took him till Christmas Day, but he decided, okay, I'm going to run the football more. I'm going to play great defense, and I'm going to not turn this ball over. And when I can make throws and make plays, as this line protects, I'm good. That's the key. The key, what you want to be, if you're one of the 32 NFL coaches, is to take these weeks leading up to figure out, okay, what do I need to do to help my team win the opening game, win the month of September? And it's going to take some time. How do we play defensively? How do we play offensively? What do we need to do to shift our practice plan? What do we look like? How do we handle this situation and those situations? I mean, that's what it's all about. And if you don't practice, you fall short. It's why Cincinnati, of all teams, have changed the methodology. Sean McVay doesn't play his guys in the preseason, but his practices are hard. Mm-hmm. So you have to understand. So you can't play football or practice football without playing football.
100%. I think Mike Tomlin put it best when he was asked about it by NFL Network about having physicality at practice. And he says, our goal in training camp is to minimize the speculation. And it goes to what you're saying, we need to figure this thing out, and it's hard to figure it out if we're doing thud, if we're doing all this stuff. That's just not what football actually is. You got to go ahead and tackle to the ground and do those types of things that resemble what we're going to see in the games. The final preseason game of week 1 of the preseason is the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Los Angeles Rams. Cowboys laying 3.5, total 34.5. Dak Prescott not expected to play at all this preseason, dealing with a little bit of an ankle issue. Should Cowboys fans and Cowboys bettors be worried about that? And I guess, what do you make of both of these teams heading into the regular season? We're less than a month out now.
Well, I mean, there was a stir at Cowboy camp. I don't know if you saw the Twitter, but one of the Cowboy beat writers put out there, no Jerry, no McCarthy, no Steven, no Todd Williams, who's one of the main guys in their cap. He does all their cap stuff. They weren't out of practice for a while, and so it caused a stir. look, there's a lot of questions about Dallas that I can't really answer. I don't understand why it's taken so hard to get CeeDee Lamb's contract done, right? It's okay. Brandon Ayuk, the same thing. Now, CeeDee Lamb's a little different. CeeDee Lamb could make the argument that he's as good as Justin Jefferson. He could make that argument and get away with it. And it would be hard to argue with him. Ayuk can't make that argument. So we're talking about a contract somewhere in this range. And I don't know why Jerry has been so delayed in making these deals. He's got a head coach on a lame duck. He's got a defense coordinator basically on a one-year contract. Everybody's on one-year contracts. And having been in the NFL for as long as I have, coaches don't operate well in a lame duck situation. Bill Callahan was a lame duck after a Super Bowl. Our team fell apart. I think this is a dangerous situation in Dallas. And, fear does the work of reason, so you hope people respond. Mm-hmm. But it's really difficult because when you start, if things don't go well for Dallas early, everybody's going to see Mike as a substitute teacher, Mike McCarthy. And he's done too good of a job, won 12 games 3 years in a row, for them to just throw out in the street.
Yeah, I think the McCarthy, him being a lame duck, is the biggest one there, because how do you control the locker room? How do you get the respect of those guys if they all realize, you're not going to be here next year? Why do I listen to you? And that's kind of the setup that Jerry has given Mike McCarthy. All right, Simon Hunter of the Action Network joins us next to break down the National Football League.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back. This is the Lombardi Line on a Sunday morning. Femi Abebefe, Michael Lombardi here hanging out with you guys on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. And joining us now on the Progressive Guest Line, we're really, really excited to have him on here. NFL betting analyst, been doing it for a long time, Simon Hunter of the Action Network. Simon, thanks for hanging out with us and waking up with us this morning. And in the last segment, Michael and I were discussing the Dallas Cowboys and this CeeDee Lamb contract situation with teams that are dealing with these holdouts that sort of serve as the elephant in the room and cloud over their entire training camps. How do you try to bet their games in week one, specifically the Dallas Cowboys, who will be on the road against the Cleveland Browns?
Yeah, right now it's bad, right? All the vibes are just so negative. My hope is if you like the Cowboys, you just wait and you hope you might be able to see a 3, just because that number has moved. I mean, they opened as a small favorite, -1, and now they've kind of become the dog, while Cleveland, a team that, Deshaun Watson hasn't looked great at all. They've become a bigger favorite as time's gone along. It's just because I think people realize, especially public opinion, people play fantasy football. They know CeeDee Lamb right now is a top 3, top 4 guy in this league. If he's not there, that's a big deal to an offense that they need him desperately. Like, they don't have the Michael Gallups and the Amari Coopers, these other receivers there anymore. It really is all CeeDee. So that's a team where the movement makes sense, right? They should be losing value, but eventually I'm gonna come back the other way. If this touches 3, then the value totally shifts to Dallas. It's like, okay, they should lose some value here just because CeeDee isn't there, right? And we're 4 weeks away, right? Like 4 weeks from now, you guys are gonna be waking up talking week 1 games, like 2 hours away from kickoff. So it's a big deal. Like, every day that passes, at first I didn't care. Now it's August 10th. This is a big deal, right? CeeDee's not in the building. This is starting to become a real issue. And Jerry Jones, he can't help but shoot himself in the foot every time he speaks.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, Simon, let's focus. 4 weeks from today, here's one that I don't understand, and you're so good at this, you can explain it to me. Carolina, New Orleans. The line is moving towards Carolina. It was 5. Now it's being predicted to go to 4.5. What has Carolina done this summer to create a movement towards them?
They got rid of Frank Reich. Honestly, that sounds stupid, but I do think just bringing in the guy from Tampa, that you saw what he did, we're not saying he saved Baker's career, right? Baker was already improving after spending his time with Sean McVay, but he completely formed that offense around him and gave him confidence. And everything you hear in camp is he's doing the same with Bryce Young. Bryce Young has tons of confidence right now. His weapons are looking better, obviously. They can't be much worse than they were last year, right? That was as bad as it can possibly get for a team. Like, they had no confidence. Every week they would lose in crazy, embarrassing fashion. This year it just feels like they burned whatever would happen last year, and it's a new vibe. And, the Saints, I don't know if you really talked about them or looked into their team yet, Lambo. they're horrible. Like they're a team that Dennis Allen, he's the worst coach in NFL history against the spread for a reason. This man, he always underperforms. Even last year, we had them in our luck rankings. They should have had 11 wins last year. Because of him as the head coach, they only ended up with 9 wins, and they missed the playoffs. So this is a Saints team that I would say the Sean Payton days have kind of caught up to them, right? They had a bunch of bad drafts, and they really haven't signed the right people. And now, they're one of the most expensive teams, and what do they have to show for it? Like, they're not a team anyone's really high on, where on the other side, the Panthers, it's all there offensively. The question for them is, what are they going to be defensively? Because their secondary is bad, right? They're putting a lot of pressure on Joe Horn to be that guy, a guy who has not stayed healthy so far in his early career. So I get the hesitation with Carolina. Week 1, though, all the guys are healthy. I'd grab that 5. I think by kickoff it will be down to 4 in 4 weeks from now.
Yeah, as Michael knows, you don't have to twist my arm to talk me into betting against Dennis Allen. When he's laying more than a field goal out there, he's laying 5 points in that game, in a division game. We're hanging out with Simon Hunter, NFL betting analyst over at the Action Network. He's joining us here on the Progressive Guest Line. Let's go to the AFC West. The Raiders are at the Chargers, which, even though the game will be in Los Angeles, it's probably a home game for the Silver and Black. Chargers now laying 3 after the news of Justin Herbert's plantar fascia issue. Total is at 42.5. Does this game interest you? Would you go ahead and try to grab that 3 in anticipation of Herbert maybe being banged up or questionable throughout the week leading up to Week 1's game? Or how do you want to attack that one from a betting standpoint?
Yeah, I already grabbed it. So I've had that Raiders grade as my second best team in this division for 5 months now. And everyone all offseason just kept talking about how Harbaugh is going to save Herbert. It's not that he was going to save him, right? It's going to be him saving the franchise. That franchise needs to just blow it up and build it back up, right? They don't have anything. Their defensive tackle position might be the worst in football. They might give up 150 yards per game rushing. Like it's all not built out right on this team. So what do you do? First pick, Harbaugh comes in, first round pick. They passed on Neighbors, right? He went for the offensive tackle and Joe Alt. I love that move because we know what Harbaugh is, right? He's the guy that wants to kind of pound the ball and scheme it that way. Now you have Herbert with a Liz Frank injury, right? He's already in a walking boot, missing multiple weeks of camp where he needs these days in this new offense. So it's all negative. On the flip side, the Raiders, I just love everything about this team. Like they're this sneaky team that I've taken their 6.5 over wins. I took their alternated 8.5 over wins, which is plus 280. Their division odds are plus 900. People think that's crazy. There's no chance. I agree. That's why it's plus 900. I still have to put a little bit on it because they're the only team in this division. They have no fear of Mahomes, right? They're taunting this man, which I don't agree with, poking the bear, but it just shows what kind of personality this team has, right? We even talked about the fact they added Wilkins to this defense. Like Max Crosby, he's plus 700 to win Defensive Player of the Year. I like those odds. Like I really do think this is that kind of team that people aren't going to really be paying attention to because they might be starting Minshew or Aiden O'Connell at the quarterback position. I don't think that's going to matter. Like, they're going to run the 12 personnel. People are going to be blown away. This Bowers kid, when Nick Saban's telling NFL teams he's terrified of Neighbors and Bowers, you need to take notice of that. One of the best defensive minds of all college football is telling you these two guys are going to come to the league and change the league. I view Bowers and Wilkins and Neighbors the same way. I think Neighbors has been incredible with the Giants. And everything I've seen of Bowers playing for the Raiders right now in practices, even the preseason game yesterday, they had designed plays to get him open. They lined him up as fullback and broke him out to catch the ball. Like, I love the imagination they're doing with him right now on the team. So I'm a sucker for 12 personnel. I know Lambeau is as well. Like, this is an old school team that I think they're going to give fits to a lot of teams that are just not used to seeing these teams play that type of style.
Well, and especially if that front, with Crosby and Wilkins playing inside at a high level, it's going to be hard to move the football, at least run the ball on them. And we saw them create turnovers. How about a game that really interests me is I know the Rams offensive line has had some injuries in this camp, but I watched the Lions again against San Francisco. And really, when you go back and watch that tape, you just have a hard time understanding how the Lions lost that game. They were in control and they let it get away. But that being said, the Lions-Rams opener is at 3.5. It's going to go to 3. But you got to feel like the Rams will match up to this team.
Yeah, and honestly, I think you're getting, I would say you're getting an extra point of value just because everyone knows the trends. Jared Goff has never not covered week 1. And last year, it sounded crazy. We were like, okay, you're getting 3.5, 4 points right now against the Chiefs with Goff, who he's a covering machine. he went and beat the Chiefs outright on the road last year in week 1. Like, it's just, he historically has always been a very prepared Goff for the week 1 matchups. Now, on the flip side, his historical run, it was with McVay, right? Like, all those winning week 1s with McVay, who was also a guy who's always really prepared for week 1. I mean, last year against Seattle, I think they were a 5-point underdog, and they might have won by double digits week 1 against Seattle. So it's a matchup of two really prepared teams. I'm going to take the points in that situation. You just said it's 3.5. How do we not take that? Like, I agree. Detroit's a better team, right? We have way more questions on Detroit on the Rams defensive side now. The fact that, we don't know what they're going to be, what their identity is going to be now that a Hall of Famer is retired from that D-line. So the questions I understand with the Rams, but 3.5, Stafford and that offense, how do we not always feel like we're going to be in it? Especially where we don't know if Detroit, they say they fixed the secondary. I'm willing to pay to see that happen, right? I'm willing to take those points and say, okay, if you really think you fixed the secondary, let's see you stop from the best offense in all football with Puka and Cooper Kupp. So that to me is one of my favorite games. I love they made it the Sunday night game because it is really two teams that are both viewed as top 4, top 5 teams right now in the NFC.
Hey, Simon, we got about 45 seconds left. What do you make of the setup for the 49ers? Monday Night Football hosting the Jets. They're laying 5, total 44.5, of course, dealing with the contract issues of Ayuk and Trent Williams.
Yeah, train wreck for right now for the 49ers. I mean, if you're a fan of any other team, this is the dream. Like, it's all falling apart right now for this team. They're two of the most important guys. For some reason, they're not just paying them. It doesn't really make sense what's going on over there. So, the number was 6. It's now down to 5. So I'll let you know the professional money's come in. They've hit this Jets number. I don't think anyone would be shocked if this continues another couple of weeks, if this number gets down to 4, 4.5. So Ayuk's a big deal. They need to get Williams in camp. He's the most important key to that team, that offensive line. So to me, that's the biggest issue right now is not paying Trent Williams.
Yeah, he's the best left tackle in football, and right now he has missed a lot of training camp. He is Simon Hunter, NFL betting analyst over at the Action Network. Simon, thanks as always for joining us, and good luck with all the bets.
Appreciate you.
It's good stuff there from Simon Hunter, who joined us on the Progressive Guest Line. We'll react to what he had to say and also hit some other training camp headlines and preseason headlines. On the other side, this is the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back. This is the Lombardi Line here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Femi Abebefe, Michael Lombardi, hanging out on a Sunday morning. Thank you to Simon Hunter, NFL betting analyst over at the Action Network, for joining us in the last segment. I thought Simon had a lot of interesting stuff to say, Michael. It's like he's already looking at firing. It sounds like he's already fired on some of these week 1 plays as well. I thought the one that really stood out to me was the one with the Las Vegas Raiders against the LA Chargers. Because like the Raiders, it's a team that, like, I would say I'm cooler on the Raiders than what Simon is. Simon seems like he's a little bit higher on the Raiders. He's buying into some of the pieces that they have around him. It's just so hard for me to get to look past the Minshew/O'Connell at quarterback for me, but he makes a lot of good points when you look at the defensive line and some of the pieces that they had, and the skill guys, including Brock Bowers, who was pound for pound probably like one of the top 3 players in college football over the last few years.
Well, I mean, look, he's got evidence on his side. I mean, the Broncos haven't beaten them, right? I mean, last year, 2 games, they dominated the Broncos, and for as bad as the Raiders have been, and we know they haven't been a great franchise over the last 20 years since we went to the Super Bowl after 22 years, they seem to be able to dominate Denver. So he does bring some substance to his belief. And look, this defensive front can be really good. If Tyree Wilson gives them everything inside to go, Wilkins and Crosby, again, yesterday was not indicative of what we're going to see in the regular season because it was no stunts. The players don't play to the same level. But I think the quarterbacking concerns me. And I think the Broncos are going to be a little bit better. I think you got to play coaching into it. What is the coaching situation going to look like? I think all those things come into play. I'm more with you on the Raiders, but I liked hearing what he had to say because it forces you to think. Sometimes, especially for me, sometimes we go down this road and we kind of start to have a bias on a team just because we just don't like the fact that they're edging on Patrick Mahomes. I hate that.
Yeah.
He does too.
Yeah.
The fact that they're stirring the tiger. Why would we do that? I don't like that. I don't like this confidence that comes in. So, but I do think he makes a great point about the Chargers. And from what I've heard from talking to people around the league that have watched Charger practices, that have practiced against the Chargers, that's not quite where it needs to be yet. It's going to take a little bit of time. And I'm very high on Jim Harbaugh. There's no question I am. But I think with Simon's point about the Chargers as it relates to the Raiders being the second best team is, his point about the defensive tackle position, which we know they're not very good there. Bosa seems to always be hurt. Their defensive line is not very good. And I think that has to concern you. And if the quarterback's not 100% healthy, Easton Stick is not good enough. Let's be clear. Max Dugan isn't good enough. So they're going to have to get somebody in. To me, they've got a legitimate backup quarterback problem there.
Yeah, that Herbert plantar fascia injury definitely the biggest deal for this Los Angeles Chargers team as they approach the regular season, 4 weeks away from Week 1. I just think that it's the Raiders. Why I can't get there, in addition to the quarterback, but the coaches that are in that division: Reed, Harbaugh, Peyton, and then there's Antonio Pierce, who last year was really good in helping turn that thing around. But I think from a coaching prowess standpoint, I think most football fans would put him fourth in that division, which anytime that's the case, I'm always going to be a little bit skeptical of that head coach. But if you want more analysis like that and to help you out on all your contest stuff, and by the way, if you're signing up for your contest, make sure you do that. If you're from out of town, Winner's Circle Proxy. They're the best proxy, VSiN approved. We are stamping them as a proxy that you should go ahead and go with there. Of course, if you do Circa Survivor, Circa Millions, those contests feature $16 million in guaranteed cash prizes. And Winner's Circle Proxy, now in its 9th year, providing trusted proxy service for top contest players, including the Survivor and Millions contest winners from a season ago. Contest weekend, August 22nd to the 24th, winnercircleproxy.com if you want to go ahead and use them. If you're from out of town, just fly to Vegas before the season starts, sign up for both contests, and sign up with Winner Circle Proxy if you need that proxy service to help you get those contest picks in. Michael, I do want to spin this to a Survivor conversation here because I feel like I have a spicy Survivor opinion for Week 1. You know how I like to play Survivor. It's boom or bust. And last year it went bust in Week 2, fading the Baltimore Ravens with Joe.
You're a married man now. You're a married man now, Femi. You have to be a little bit, you're investing $1,000. You can't be as cavalier. You're going to have to answer to your wife here when you make a dumb play. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. You need a voice of reason to come in here. Look, I'm all for taking chances, but let's take calculated risk, not just stupid risk.
We will. The wedding has been paid for, though, so at least we have that in the rearview mirror.
Yeah, but you're married now. Trust me. There's nothing that is not going to come back and haunt you. I've lived this.
You're probably right there. But the team that I've identified, because I know a lot of people are going to look at Cincinnati Bengals as an option. Some might go down the New Orleans Saints road, which to that I'd say good luck. Buffalo's going to be really popular since they're now a 6.5-point favorite, although the betting market likes Arizona, so maybe that Buffalo game's not going to be as easy as what meets the eye. But
well, the betting market likes Arizona with the points. The betting market doesn't like Arizona
to win.
The money line isn't favoring Arizona. Let's be clear here.
No, but
so when we talk Survivor, we're talking money line. We're not talking the points.
Straight up. And for me, straight up, given the setup and how things have gone in training camp and what the history of this team is, especially on the road, I think I kind of like the Cleveland Browns Week 1 in Survivor, Michael. Dak Prescott's not going to play at all in the preseason, so there's going to be a little bit of rust there just to get up to game speed against a defense that when they're at home is a menacing defense. Those guys are flying around. And I think where the Cowboys are, and I don't think the offensive line is going to be bad this year. I think actually sounds like from reports that Tyler Guyton's further along than they expected, so maybe he can be a nice replacement. But this is still going to be his first professional game going up against the reigning defensive player of the year in Myles Garrett. And what they like to do on that defensive side of the ball, I just think that this is a really bad setup for Dallas Week 1 against the Browns defense that at home is the best in the league.
Can I urge you to do something before you jump down this road?
Yes.
I urge you to take the time when Schwartz was the head coach of the Lions and Mike was the head coach of the Packers and kind of get a sense of how those games went and how the Lions defense played against the McCarthy offense. Because that's what you're going to eventually see. Schwartz has probably spent a lot of time watching McCarthy attack him at the Lions. And McCarthy spent a lot of time watching how how he attacked him at the Lions with the wide nines and all that stuff. So I think to gauge that, that's why it's so important to study the coordinators. It's really important to understand who has an understanding of it, of how they do and how they call the game, what they do. I agree in principle and in spirit with your analysis of Cleveland, a much better team at home defensively. It's kind of uncanny.
Yeah.
But let me say this about Cleveland that's scary. What makes me worried is the fact that this was a team that was the best third down team in all of football last year, the best third down defensive team in all of football, and yet they were the worst red zone team. Those two things usually don't go hand in hand. So there's something missing here. Now, I do think playing at home, playing on Lake Erie, I think with Myles Garrett, they can move him around and do that. But I think you also have to look at, Deshaun Watson against Mike Zimmer.
Yeah.
Like, how is that working? And how is it going to be with Ken Dorsey now? Stefanski claims he's calling plays again. He's not handing it over to Dorsey. I think there's a lot of uncertainty, and I'm not really ready to say I agree that Deshaun Watson's automatically going to come back. I'm not ready to go there. I think it's a tricky game. I think probably on paper it looks like a better play than, I would be scared to death to play Cincinnati, New England. But now that I know Cincinnati's playing their guys in preseason, I may not be as scared of that.
Yeah, I think Cincinnati's a much safer option this year than they were in years past when they were just kind of, I don't know what they were doing in training camp in the preseason, but it clearly wasn't getting ready for the regular season. Now they're actually approaching it from we need to have our guys hitting the ground running, so it's a little bit safer. But I just think that in Survivor, you do have to kind of be able to willing to zig when others zag. It's a risk, and I 100% acknowledge that. It's the Browns right now, according to the market, they're like a 53 or 54% chance of winning, which means you got about a 48% chance of losing and going bust before the first Sunday is even over.
How about this line? How about this game? Seattle, Denver. And I'm a huge Seattle guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a huge Denver guy. And I think the opening day is a little different. But Seattle's right now been around a 5-point favorite, and it's going to go to 5.5. There's money coming in on Seattle. With Seattle playing at home, Mike McDonald's home opener, rookie quarterback, a good young defense, Bo Nix on the road. If you're going to take a chance, would Seattle be one of your chances?
I think you could go with Seattle because, we saw a rookie quarterback last year against a Mike McDonald defense, C.J. Stroud against the Ravens, and boy, did they struggle offensively in that game. Like for young quarterbacks in particular, that Seattle defense I think is going to be tough for them. And hey, how about our guy Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle, already making splash plays, tackle for loss in yesterday's game against the Chargers. He looks like he's going to be a really good player and a force on the interior. I think for Survivor purposes, you could go down that path. I just like to go off a little bit of the beaten path here. You know how I go.
Married man, be careful. Be careful.
We haven't locked anything in yet. We have not locked anything, so we can always change our minds. But that's just kind of where the gears are turning as we're about a month out from the regular season. We'll play some Jerry Jones sound on the other side, though. This is interesting. We'll have the conversation about Lamb, Jerry, and the rest of the Cowboys next here on the Lombardi Line.
This is the Lombardi Line with former NFL executive Michael Lombardi. Now here is your host, Femi Abebefe, on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network.
Welcome back. This final segment of the Lombardi Line here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Femi Abebefe alongside Michael Lombardi out in Seattle, Washington, on the road, but doing the show nonetheless. The grind never stops. And when it's National Football League time, preseason rolling along, we got to go ahead and give out our analysis. In the last segment, we're discussing that Browns-Cowboys game and a potential maybe survivor path on Cleveland if you want to go ahead and zig when others are zagging in Circus Survivor, which is, I fully admit, hand raised. It is a lot of risk, and you might feel bad by the end of the afternoon, but sometimes I always say in Survivor, if you're not sweating heading into your game, you're not playing it correctly. You got to be nervous as hell.
Yeah.
So
I think what I've learned, and again, I'm not an expert on Survivor. I've never played it, and I don't do any of that. But what I've learned from being at VSiN here for as long as I have is the key is to get through week one. And the key is also in week one is to do a good job of handicapping teams that are well prepared for the opening game. Like, ideally, you want to play Baltimore because John Harbaugh does a great job preparing the Ravens on opening day, but you don't want to mess with Kansas City. That's going to be too hard of a game, right?
Yeah.
So I think, to me, you want to – you want to make sure you want to make sure you're going to get in the contest. You don't want to go week one and then lose. Now you want to stay away from. I think you want to stay away from teams on the road. I think but we know this: road teams win opening day. We know that bad teams can win on opening day. Why? Why can a bad team win opening day? Because of the preseason, no one shows anything. There's a layer of uncertainty within the scheme framework. And you sometimes, when you're playing against a bad team opening day, there's not a sense of urgency. Like, oh, we got this. We're going to play good. We'll beat this team. So, again, you have to be careful when you're looking at those things. So I think that there's upsets in regular season week one. We saw Jacksonville beat Indianapolis. Everybody went out of the contest on that one. I mean, if Cincinnati loses to New England in week one, I would suspect that Derek Stevens is probably going to have his hands on 70% of the tickets,
100%. Yeah. If New England,
I think you have to take the sure thing. And this year in week one, the only sure thing is, Buffalo home against Arizona. That seems sure. Cincy home against New England. That seems sure. Because here's why I think I would lean towards Cincy in week one. Because Zach Taylor's playing his guys. Mayo's a young coach, never had been a head coach before. Mike Tomlin went back in there 2 years ago, but Mike Tomlin's different than Mayo. So that's a completely – and even though they turned it over 5 times, Cincy still had a chance to win. I think Cincy's defensive problems last year will force them to have attentiveness in week one. And I think, to me, I would be shocked if Cincy doesn't start. Oh, now, understanding Chase has got to play too, but I don't think they're going to be as good defensively, New England. I think when you watch New England, there's a lot of concerns coming out of that area.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the Bengals, it would be, I don't want to say a stunner because it's week one, anything can happen, but it'll be definitely really, really surprising if they lost that game outright to the New England Patriots as 9-point favorites, especially when they know that they got Kansas City coming up in week 2. You can't all of a sudden just be looking at now we're 0-2 again, like how we always are. That would go ahead and just put them in a hole, which they don't want to do this year, given the fact that they've actually been playing their guys throughout training camp in the preseason. We mentioned, though, the Dallas Cowboys. They have contract issues, of course, with CeeDee Lamb, who is holding out. He is not doing the Ayuk and holding in and showing up and just smiling and not practicing. CeeDee Lamb has not arrived in Oxnard, and Jerry Jones was asked about if he had any urgency to get a deal done with CeeDee Lamb. Here's what he told Cowboys reporters earlier this week.
Are you saying there's a sense of urgency as you begin the preseason to get CeeDee done?
No.
Why you say that?
I'm I went to high school or I went to college. I don't know why I said it, but I'm just saying I don't know. I don't have a sense of urgency about getting it done.
Because it's a long-standing tradition.
Pick any reason you want. I was at Nobu 2 days ago. Give that as a reason.
Jerry is he's one of a kind. He certainly is. Pick any reason you want as to why I have no urgency. What do you make of what he had to tell Cowboys reporters earlier this week?
Jerry answers to Jerry. So why would Jerry have urgency? Jerry doesn't respond. He doesn't have a board of directors he has to answer to. He doesn't have an owner he has to answer to. He is the owner.
Yep.
So if he doesn't have a sense of urgency, only he knows why it's taken so long. I don't know. Like, for me, contracts are about information. Contracts are about comparables. Right. So you have somebody that works within your organization. You call it a comparative analysis person. OK, here's the deals that are coming in. Here's who we value. We grade every single player on our team. We grade every player in the NFL. So, CeeDee Lamb's a blue chip, grade him a 7.0. Justin Jefferson's a blue chip. We graded him a 7.3. OK, they're in the same category. All right. So if they're in the same category on a grade that we've given by people independently that work for us without bias, then we know that the market is going to dictate where it is. Now, Jefferson didn't go way above the market and become an outlier, he stayed within the market, and how you view the deal is a little bit different, whether it's $32 million or $35 based on new money or old money. That being said, there's a basis of doing a deal. So it's not that challenging. How much is the guarantee? What's the percentage of the guarantee? How do you want the spread? How do you want the outlay of the money? How do we handle this? And to me, there is urgency there, because I want to plan on this so that I can plan on Parsons and I can plan on what I got to do with Dak. But Jerry seems to be taking the approach of, look, I'm going to wait and see on everybody. And whether it's Mike Zimmer, the defensive coordinator, whether it's Mike McCarthy, the head coach, or whether it's CeeDee Lamb. I mean, he's been consistently doing nothing.
Yeah, and he's talking almost like as someone who knows something that we don't know, which I'm sure he obviously has a lot of information and he would know stuff that we don't know, but it's a little bit mind-boggling. CeeDee Lamb, of course, took to Twitter, because that's what guys do this day and age, because John Machota, who covers the Cowboys, tweeted out what Jerry had to say, and CeeDee Lamb just quote tweeted and said, LOL. How do you interpret what CeeDee had to say and when he chimed in on Jerry Jones's thoughts?
I'm sorry, I missed you, Femi. You broke up for a second.
Oh, okay, sorry. I was saying, how do you interpret what CeeDee Lamb had to say on Twitter with the LOL comment, quote tweeting what was tweeted out about Jerry Jones, saying that there's no urgency to get a deal done?
Well, he laughed out loud. He probably doesn't understand it either. But for me, like, again, it's like, what is the market? Like, Ayuk is asking for above his grade. It's pretty clear. I don't know what Lamb's asking for. And Chase, to me, seems like he's waiting for the land deal to come in. We haven't even talked about Chase.
Nope.
Chase is on his 5th year of his deal. He's on his 4th year.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't have to. Mike Brown typically would never do this. There's something going on. Mike Brown's an older gentleman, and he certainly has passed on the running of his organization to his daughter, Katie Brown Blackburn. And so this is not typical for Mike to have a sit-in. I can promise you that. However, that being said, at some point, you're going to have to handle the Chase situation too.
Yeah, the Jamar Chase one, it's interesting how that hasn't really – I mean, it's been reported, but nobody's really gone crazy with this thing, because he is a very important wide receiver to that Bengals offense. He's one of the best wide receivers for my money in the National Football League, and he's just not practicing. And I don't know what's going to change between now and week 1 that's going to get him on the field. Like, other than missing the game checks, that will, of course, become a thing. He's not going to want to miss out on those. But if they're not going to pay him his money or whatever he desires right now, why would he return to the practice field next week or the week after that? Maybe he's just going to show up game week like Saquon or Josh Jacobs did last year and say, hey, I'm here, guys. Let's get ready to roll. Like, it just seems like it's weird that nobody's really talked about this Jamar Chase thing, because he's just as impactful as a lot of these guys, and he's not practicing either, but we've all been talking about Ayuk and CeeDee Lamb and the rest of them.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like they have like Ayuk, they have 3 years with his rights. CeeDee Lamb, they have 3 years with his rights. I mean, Chase, they have 4 years with his rights. They have 2 more years of a contract, and then they have 2 more years of a franchise. So, like, I don't know where this is all going. And maybe because it's just preseason, nobody's taking it seriously. But at some point, you got to get on with your team. You got to kind of say, okay, here's what we're doing.
Yeah, 100%. We have about 40 seconds left in the show. I want to give a quick update on the games that we'll have today. Colts are laying 2.5, total 37.5. But the market has come heavy on the Dallas Cowboys against the Los Angeles Rams. That's now out to 5 in some spots. The Cowboys favored, total sitting at 33.5.
That's a reflection of Stetson Bennett playing quarterback versus Trey Lance, right? One guy's had a little bit of experience, the other guy hasn't. And the Rams have so many injuries in their offensive line, which affects the depth of their team.
You excited for the Trey Lance show today?
I'm excited to watch him play to get an opportunity. I'm not convinced he's going to be their answer to not signing Dak. I'll say that.
Yeah. Well, enjoy the games, Michael. Enjoy the Pacific Northwest. I'll talk to you tomorrow on the GM Shuffle.
Thank you, Femi.
All right. The Handle's coming up next with Matt Brown and Mike Somich here on VSiN.
Don't bet college football this season without VSiN's college football betting guide.